Speaking alongside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House, the president said a very big meeting will take place on Saturday. U.S. officials are expected to sit down with Iranian officials to directly discuss a nuclear deal on Saturday in a meeting hosted by Oman. Direct talks between the U.S. and Iran could represent a blow to Israel, which has long advocated for striking Iran's nuclear facilities. But Israel and the United States have vowed they will never let Iran acquire a nuclear weapon. And Emanuel Perlman Foundation Destination Peace joins me from Maryland via Zoom. It's good to have you join us on The World Now. This announcement came at a time when Trump had a meeting with Netanyahu. But let's remember that Trump has walked out on a nuclear deal. That was in 2018, a deal that Americans had already agreed upon. How different do you think the talks will be this time around? And how significant do you think this is for Iranians?
I think, first of all, that most of the people of Iran prefer peace and prosperity over war. It's in the economic interests of Iran's leadership to engage constructively with the West, including Israel, to bring lasting peace to the region. This will benefit all the peace-loving people of the Middle East and raise Iran's political stature among Western countries, and I think it will reduce the risk of war coming directly to Iran.
But what do you think Iran's approach to this will be, considering that we've heard the supreme leader in Iran vowing to retaliate if Trump carries out his threat of bombing Iran if they do not agree to a nuclear deal on Saturday?
Again, I would reiterate that I think that at some point the hierarchy is going to have to include in their decision-making what the consensus of the people is. That's number one. Number two, I think that there is strong rhetoric and there is a call still for the extermination of Israel from the river to the sea. So I think that on some level there is in the Middle East an alignment with that call. And I think that they use that in order to bring up the rhetoric with regard to the nuclear ideas. Now, if you look at a person like Kajima Fukuyama has been speaking out. He's in his mid-80s in Japan. He was 6 years old when, unfortunately, Hiroshima took place, and he's out there talking to young people and educating people about the devastation that's caused by nuclear holocausts. So I think that at some point there will be rational talking to pull back, because we can't have a third approach towards nuclear conversation, certainly not having a nuclear catastrophe occur.
And is this likely to impact U.S.-Israel relations, considering the fact that we've always heard Netanyahu saying that Iran should not own a nuclear deal in that sense? But is this likely to affect the relationship since Donald Trump is deciding to come to a consensus?
I think, again, that there'll be further conversations about it, and that they will have to commit to peace, and that there has to be an unequivocal approach towards this. So again, there has to be some diplomacy in this. I would say to you that traveling the world, I have discovered that there are a lot of conversations happening in back rooms. And I would believe that Trump he's known as the master of the deal. Whether people agree with that or not, that's how he puts himself out there. And I think that he will put the screws and he'll make things difficult with regard to the economic systems and everything else in Iran. So I do believe that they will have to come to some agreement and consensus a lot faster than we realize, because things are imminent with regard to Iran's nuclear capabilities.
And that's for the relationship with the United States and Iran. But let's talk about the market and what happened yesterday. We've seen extreme swings in political ideologies, especially the move by Trump to also, bring in tariffs for major nations. Do you think this is a short-term worry, or we are in for a recession?
I think the trend in the world is towards lower tariffs to facilitate greater global trade and prosperity. And most richer countries, including the United States, have prospered because of low tariffs and increased trade. And economists agree, at least here, that the present high U.S. tariffs will slow economic growth and trade both domestically and abroad. Therefore, it is in the economic interests of the United States and trading partners to work towards lower tariffs to promote increased trade and prosperity for all countries. I would hope that this is temporary, but I would think that there's opportunities to rebalance, for example, in our country, the domestic manufacturing, generate revenue. So some of these things will trickle down. I hate to use that terminology back to the Reagan administration, but I think that it will create volatile global markets, but it's too significant to ignore, yes. But I do believe that over time, there has to be some correction. And I think that will happen to the U.S. markets.
And we're hoping for a change along the line. However, we've seen in recent days global leaders going into the White House. There have been several calls hoping they can take their nations out of these tariffs. But if the situation doesn't change, how should nations prepare themselves for the impact of these tariffs, especially for nations that are also, retaliating?
That's a very good question. And I think, again, that people have to take a look at President Trump's approaches throughout his two administrations so far, and the second one. And you really have to follow the well-respected economists in every country and decide whether these tariffs are going to be like a consumption tax, and decide for each country's sake whether or not this is going to be protracted or whether it will be temporary. So really, the countries are starting to join in because people are afraid with regard to how far this will go on.
And what do you make of how this is going to, impact how people assess the Trump administration? This is coming at a time where Elon Musk is also saying no to tariffs, and is expecting that there should be a bounce back of the United States economy. But what do you make of how this is going to impact how people assess this administration?
I think, again, that's another good question, but I think it's a lot more than economics. I think there's a human element in terms of people losing positions and jobs, and whether people will continue to have faith in agencies over time, and what kind of replacements are we putting in there. So people are assessing this all the time in terms of whether or not we have the capable people to exact these kinds of changes that Elon Musk is bringing through Doge.
Founder Destination Peace, Emanuel Perlman, thank you for joining us on The World Now.
My pleasure.